All right, everyone, welcome to the FMP vlog on remote work and workplace flexibility. I'm joined by our wonderful FMPers. We have Emily, Ashley, and Mike on the call today. And we're just going to be talking about, the benefits of what it's like to work for an office that allows for this flexibility. And these three specifically are full-time remote for FMP. So it's great that we can talk to them, especially using the tools we have. So I'm just going to throw it to them first. Ashley, if you just want to start off telling us about how long you've been with FMP and how long you've been remote.
Great. Hi, everyone. I'm Ashley Agerter, and I've been with FMP for going on 14 years. I'm a managing consultant here, and I've been remote for probably about the last 5 years or so.
Okay, awesome. And Mike?
Hi everyone, I'm Mike Camburn. I have been with FMP for 16 years, and I've been remote for the last 10 years.
And I'm Emily Fairbairn. I've been with FMP for almost 8 years, which makes me sound like the newbie in the crowd. And I've been remote for going on 2 years now.
Okay. I'll remind everyone that I'm the newbie in this crowd.
Yeah.
All right, so I'll just start off with probably one of the most basic questions, and I'll let you guys bounce off of each other on this one. So, in your opinion, what do you think are the biggest pros and cons of the ability to work remotely? And Emily, I'll shoot it off.
Sure. Yeah, I'll go and start. Yeah. So I think the most obvious pro is the flexibility that it allows a company in being able to keep employees. So I think about my situation, why I went remote was because my husband's work relocated us to Chicago from Virginia. So if FMP did not have the flexibility to let me move into a remote work arrangement, I would have had to leave the company, find a different job. So it is a mechanism that allows companies to retain employees even as they move around, have different kind of life circumstances. So that's definitely a pro. A con would be kind of the flip side of that is that without having an employee in the office, it might be more limiting on what they can work on. So if you think of FMP, we have a lot of client-facing consultants, and if they are not in the area or very close by and easily accessible to come to the office for in-person engagements, it can be more prohibitive of what role they can play on the projects. So that's kind of the other side of the flexibility coin.
Yeah, I'd say my pro is very similar to Emily's in that I knew I was moving, and allowing for this arrangement really enabled me to stay with FMP. I was the first person at FMP to go remote, and at the time it was relatively new, so about a decade ago, relatively new, especially in the federal space, which is where we primarily work. And what was great was that at the time, FMP leadership wasn't just supportive, but really excited about testing out some of these strategies that we're helping our clients test out. So in a way, I was sort of FMP's guinea pig for remote work. And I think it's proven to be successful. And I think it's successful because it really helped shift the focus of what work is. From a place you go to something you do. So I just keep that in mind with any type of work that we do. It's not necessarily where we are, but rather what we're doing. Now, the con is, I'd say, primarily the barriers that we've overcome, and I'd say mostly barriers in perception. And these have diminished over the last decade. I think those who have never worked in a telework environment or just aren't comfortable with having a remote team tend to have some perceptions that it can't work. And so for those, we just demonstrate that it can work, or we just put ourselves in the right situations. But I'd say that the cons, there's also a con, the social con of not being co-located with other team members. Now we can overcome that, but that is definitely, it takes extra effort when we are remote.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Pros certainly in the recruitment and retention side of things to be able to talk about this as a benefit that FMP is able to provide on a case-by-case basis and still offer exciting career opportunities and continue to be supportive of employees for the variety of reasons that they might end up going into a remote arrangement for a short period of time or a longer period of time. So there's that side of it. And then the con piece of it, I completely agree with what Mike and Emily have said. And these are things that are definitely not insurmountable. I think the things that we'll talk about in terms of the cons, there's just a lot more intentionality. I think there's a lot more accountability for you as a remote employee to make sure that you're the one driving the risk management on some of those potential cons. And then just a little bit more creativity around tools that you're using to be able to have, create that personal touch that just doesn't come as naturally when you are at the home office every day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think some of those cons are definitely hard to get over, especially at first. But you guys talked about a lot of the tools we have, and Mike, you talked about not being co-located. So I want to talk about relationships here, and building and maintaining relationships. So Ashley and Mike, you are full-time consultants. So I want to bring this conversation for you guys to how you are maintaining the relationships with your clients. Whereas Emily, your client is FMP, and you are constantly in contact with, the FMPers here. So Ashley and Mike, if you could sort of speak to the client relationships and how that differs being remote. And then Emily, if you could talk about just the internal relationships that you maintain.
Sure.
Yeah, I can start out and just mention that, one piece is being opportunistic about the opportunities that you do have during face-to-face conversations and making space for those. So Mike and I and Emily as well, we all do come back to the home office on a very regular basis. And those times that you're back at the home office and at FMP are extremely busy, much in part because you are creating additional opportunities to get in front of your clients and have those face-to-face interactions. And so many of those times, you don't absolutely have to have a meeting in person because you've probably set precedent that things can happen very seamlessly in a remote environment using WebEx, using Teams, using Adobe Connect, but just making sure to take the extra effort to actually get down there when you're there and create that space to make that happen. And then also, I think, using the tools that you do have as well. So not everything is over email, but really, again, making that extra effort to, I could absolutely send this over email, but I'm going to make it more of a practice just to pick up the phone on a more routine basis than I would in an environment where if I was seeing that client more routinely face-to-face. And as well, I could just make this a conference call, but you know what? I'm actually going to add the video component so we can all see each other and make sure that we have those opportunities to interact in that way as well.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's all great. And I'd say the challenges in developing relationships are no different than someone who is in the office. It's just magnified. And so the additional tools are great. But I think what's important to keep in mind is when we build those relationships, especially with customers, is to focus on the personal relationships. Being intentional about being curious about their work and honoring their work and really serving them and being interested in being part of their team. We're confident in our technical skills. We know we're going to do a great job, but it's those customers that we build those personal ties with that we really maintain and for a long period. So it's really nothing that we should be doing differently in terms of our approach. It's just we need to be on top of it more and be more intentional.
Yeah, and I think from the internal perspective, it's not all that different. There are, established relationships because I was in the office for several years before going into a remote work arrangement. So having developed those relationships definitely helps to maintain them because I know a lot about the people I work with and we have those kind of personal connections that Mike was talking about. The similarity with getting a new client would be when we have new employees join FMP who I haven't met in person yet. So to Ashley's point, I try to come back pretty regularly. And every time I do come back, I make it a point to meet with those new employees to say, it's just an introduction, but I want to get some FaceTime with you so we can get to know each other. And then it makes it a little bit easier to interact virtually because you're working off of that in-person basis as a foundation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, I can definitely vouch to say that all three of you, whenever you're in the office, you're constantly talking to people, making sure you're getting the FaceTime, and I think that really helps. Then when you're remote, we can still maintain that relationship.
Yeah, and I add one more thing, Ben.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Mm-hmm.
What I've also noticed the last couple of years, almost all of the leadership teams I'm working with are also geographically dispersed. And so
Right.
they have developed their own way of working with one another. So it's almost a little bit unique sometimes coming back to FMP where we are co-located. A couple of my customers right now, they are scattered across the country. And so learning the way that they interact and trying to model that. And then also coming back to FMP and sharing those strategies as well.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. So we've talked about now sort of the in-office experiences and relationships. Now I want to talk about a more fun topic and about the home life. So, a lot of people say the cons of remote work are that you're bringing your work home and it's constantly there. So what strategies do you use to stay motivated and focused while you're at home? And sort of how do you make sure that the work doesn't really influence your life because it is in your life? That's a loaded question. So sorry about that.
I'll jump in again here. So that's something I often tell people is when I tell them I work from home, they think that's great, but I also remind them that means that I live at work. And so one of the first things I did, there were a few things I did when I first went remote. And one thing I always kept in mind is the burden of proof on making this work is always on me. I need to show every day that I can make this arrangement work. And so for the first year or so, I would get up and go through a normal morning routine that I would as if I were going to work. That provides that psychological barrier between your homework and your work life, rather than just walking down the hall in your pajamas and getting to work. And sometimes I would even advocate for actually leaving the house, going and doing something, and then coming back to really feel that break. But then within my home office, I tell people they should have an office with a door so that they can go into the office, close the door, and really mimic a work environment that they would have in the office. Likewise, keep work in the office so that you can leave it at the end of the day. Now, everyone has work on their phones now, so that's no different than anyone else having email on their phone at all times, but at least keeping your computer and files and everything else in a space that's separate from your living space.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think, to Mike's point, those are like established best practices for setting up your home office and really dedicating the physical space to give you the mental space to focus on work. I think also it is a little bit driven by personality. So I think you have to have it has to be a good fit for your work style and, your work preferences. And it also takes a bit of practice. So I think in the beginning, I struggled with that a little bit because it was like, oh, I can just work for another half an hour because I'm not commuting. So I'm just going to add some more time to what I'm doing and I'll kind of work through lunch. And then once I put more structure around my day, scheduled my own lunch break, just like I would if I were in the office to go eat in the kitchen or go out and get something to eat. And then really just learn to shut work down when I shut my computer down. And it just takes a bit of practice too. So it doesn't always come easily immediately.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree with all of those things. I don't know if I have too much more to add on that one.
Yeah, I definitely can vouch for that because whenever I do work from home or work remotely, I think Mike, you talked about like leaving the house. I'll typically work at a coffee shop for a few hours, just making sure like I'm breaking up the day because I'm not very monotonous, so I like change. So I think just understanding like what type of personality you have and what type of interests you have, and then just making sure that every day you're implementing that into your work life. So we'd be remiss to not talk about all the headlines coming on the news recently about things that are causing people to work from home and sort of social barriers. So I just want to talk about what the pros are to employers allowing for this type of remote work, especially in a time where social influences are causing, many workplaces to go into this type of flexibility?
Well, I think what it allows is a lot of organizations to address some pretty major tensions that they're feeling around needing to continue to be productive and keep their employees productive, but also recognize the need for employee safety and care. And so being able to offer tools and technologies to support telework arrangements where folks can work from home and practice some of that social distancing and some of the things that we're seeing around guidance on this allows companies a little bit more flexibility to address both of those really important needs.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think the continuity of operations is the huge, factor there. That's a pro. And also just the contribution to like the public health concern about not having large groups of people congregate together. A company offering virtual remote options is contributing to, the benefit that we're trying to gain from having people split apart a little bit for some time. So I think it also just kind of adds to the greater good of what's trying to be achieved by this.
Flattening the curve, as they're
Exactly.
saying.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, and it has a much less impact on us and our operations because we are prepared to work remotely. We're paired with telework. Even those of us who don't work remote, telework, usually at least a couple days a week. So we are all prepared to operate that way. And we also have a management team that knows how to manage a remote team, which, for those that are primarily co-located, it does take a different skill set and a different type of management style to be able to manage those who are remote. So we are prepared from staff to management.
Yeah, I think being prepared is the biggest part in this. Whereas, like, if an office is now trying to implement remote work quickly in this type of situation, it's probably not going to flow well. Whereas, we've been doing this for a while now, so it's like this doesn't necessarily change anything about our day-to-day work, which is really nice, and I think that's what's putting us ahead of the curve.
Yeah, I mean, the other unintended potential benefit of something like this too, in terms of providing these tools and resources, is it allows employees who maybe most of their clients or customers that they interact with are co-located, so their skills and tools and practice around facilitating in a remote environment or leveraging tools like an Adobe Connect or a WebEx to actually facilitate in a virtual environment. Maybe they just haven't had as much practice or some of those skills are a little bit rusty. So it does really provide an opportunity to remind and refresh and learn how to use some of these tools that are very effective even when things like this are going on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, tools are huge. Like, we're using Microsoft Teams right now. I'm sure a lot of you are confused why the background is blurred here, but that's just one of the features that Microsoft Teams offers. So you have a small look into their personal lives, but not the full deal. All right, so I want to be conscious of you all's time because I know you guys are incredibly busy. So I want to just ask each one of you just one last question. So if you could go back in time at the start of your remote journeys, and for some of you it's been a while, what's the one thing you would tell yourself, the one piece of advice that you give your younger self about remote work?
I would probably say join a frequent flyers program ASAP. That's been critical for me.
Yeah.
So should have done that sooner.
For me, I'd say it's probably to maintain visibility within the office. I mean, make sure that the work that I'm doing is visible within the office. When I'm back in the office, I try to talk to as many people as possible. Even when I'm out of the office, maintaining strong relationships with my teammates. But what I noticed is sometimes not everyone else in the office knows what I'm doing or the projects I'm working on. Whereas I think you get a little more of that connection when you're in the office. So I think just maintaining presence within the office space, even when you're not there every day.
Mm-hmm.
I might say invest in a nice web camera, because these web-based conversations and meetings just do really add a lot and enhance an experience for a remote employee, to make sure we do stay connected to everyone back at the office and our clients as well.
Mm-hmm. I agree with all those. Those are great recommendations, and these three are definitely our subject matter experts on working remotely. So we have a lot to learn from them, and I hope you guys learned some good tips and takeaways. And yeah, it's a journey, not just a sprint. So yeah, Bree, thank you guys for joining us, and I will talk to you guys soon.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks, Ben.
Thanks.
See you guys.
Bye.
Bye.